The Saw franchise is known for its gruesome horror and torture-filled movies, but did you know that it also had a video game adaptation? Even 2 adaptations, but that's a whole separate video. Many people say that this is one of the best movie to video games ever made, while others say it's a piece of shit. In this video, we'll take a look and see if it lived up to the legacy of the film franchise. Released in 2009, Saw, the video game, was developed by Zombie Studios and published by Konami on October 6, 2009 on the PS3, Xbox 360 and PC. Konami is the same company that has made banger franchises like Metal Gear Solid and Silent Hill. Saw was Zombie Studios' first horror game, as they mostly focused and made action games. This is pretty apparent, but honestly they did a pretty good job for their first horror game. The story is a 1-to-1 representation of the Saw movies. It has the same characters, plot and story as the movies. I won't get too in-depth with the actual story since it's literally the same as the movies. This game takes place between the first and second movies. If you haven't watched the movies yet, I highly suggest you watch them. It's a painful watch but also somehow kind of fun. The story focuses on Detective Tap. Tap is a detective, that has obsessed and dedicated his life and career to finding the psycho killer only known as the Jigsaw Killer. The Jigsaw Killer kidnaps people and puts them through horrifying and painful traps and challenges that most people don't survive. During the game, we learn that Jigsaw does this because he wants people to start valuing and appreciating life. He kidnaps people that have wasted their life, like drug addicts, suicidal people, and African American detectives that obsess over him and are ready to do anything and everything to catch him. Anyway, the game starts with Tap waking up in a dirty bathroom with an iconic reverse bear trap. He quickly rips it off and exits. It turns out that Jigsaw kidnapped Tap and put him in an abandoned insane asylum that is filled with traps and a bunch of killers. Yay! Jigsaw also tells us that while Tap was knocked out, he put a key inside of his stomach that will free anyone in the asylum, including the dozens of others that have been kidnapped and have also been told the same information. Double yay! Tap ventures through the asylum, escaping traps himself and freeing others from traps, while also killing a bunch of bad guys. Jigsaw does not only test Tap's will to survive, but also his morals, as he forces him to save people that are some way connected to him. I like the ending of the game. Tap arrives at 2 doors. One door has the word freedom written on it, while the other has the word truth. Jigsaw says that if Tap enters the freedom door, he will free everyone in the asylum and save himself. It will prove that he has overcome his own obsession with catching Jigsaw. The truth door will lead him to Jigsaw himself and will show him that Tap has learned nothing and will continue throwing his life away. Each door has a different ending that you can get. The freedom door will show that Tap is viewed as a hero, but is unable to cope with the fact that he didn't catch Jigsaw. It shows him taking his revolver and putting it against his head, which assumes that he commits suicide. The truth door will show Tap pursuing the figure he's been seeing throughout the asylum to find out it's Melissa, who was forced to go through the asylum keeping track on Tap with her son's life on the line. As she flees, she is killed by a trap while Tap goes insane and is committed to an asylum. A real one, not an abandoned one. Both endings are tragic and end in misery. I actually enjoyed the story, mainly because I enjoyed the movies. I would have liked the ability to not rescue survivors and just let them die from the traps and have that affect the ending that you get, but that's a lot to ask. Overall, I enjoyed the story. The gameplay mainly focuses on the puzzles while having some combat on the side. While you roam the asylum, you will have to solve all sorts of different puzzles to save survivors, unlock cabinets, unlock doors, and much more. What I noticed about the puzzles was that they are pretty easy and self-explanatory in the very beginning. However, around 3/4 of the game through, the puzzles and challenges suddenly get very difficult and complicated very quickly. In the beginning, the puzzles take around 20 seconds, while some later puzzles would take me around 7 to 10 minutes to solve. I'm not a very big fan of puzzle games, let alone puzzles, so the latter part of the game was excruciating for me. I would have to look for old ass playthroughs of this game on YouTube to help me solve some of these puzzles. Like, look at this shit. You have to do this shit in 3 minutes or you will fucking blow up. This puzzle specifically is the one I hate the most. You have to do it so many times throughout the game that it's not even funny. And each time you do it, they add more of these blocks to make it harder. Even though they are very hard and sometimes tedious, they fit well with the Saw theme. The combat in this game is very lacking. The main premise is that you can hold a button and enter combat mode. In this mode, you can perform a light attack, a heavy attack, and a block. Blocking an enemy will give you a quick time event that will give you the opportunity to finish them off. In the asylum, you can find a bunch of weapons, things like pipes, mop handles, crowbars, and syringes. There is also a revolver that one-taps absolutely anyone and everything, however, they're pretty hard to find. There are 18 different weapons, however, the weapons themselves aren't different from each other, except that they look different. They don't have different stats or abilities. Each weapon has a durability bar, but I had never broken any weapon because the durability was too low. I found myself constantly switching my weapons, so the feature is not too interesting or useful. The biggest issue with the combat is that it feels really unresponsive. From the time you get into the combat stance and press an attack button, the enemy will have already hit you and stunned you. This just repeats itself and it feels like you're just getting stun locked. You can also seemingly only swing and attack when standing still. The only way to get out of this is to run away from the enemy and try to hit him when he has missed the swing. The enemies are all the same, so it gets boring doing the same thing over and over again. You can, however, spice things up with traps. Scattered throughout the asylum, you will find shotgun traps mounted to doors. When you open a door that has a shotgun trap, you will be prompted with a quick time event to turn it off. If you fail to do so, I think you can imagine what will happen to you. After you disable the trap, you can re-enable it. Anyone that walks through the tripwire will get their brains splattered, including you. I like that there are traps like these scattered around everywhere, so you always have to be very vigilant and wary. It adds more tension to the game. There is a slight aspect of survival horror in this game. While exploring, you can loot different drawers and cabinets to get resources like shotgun shells, chemicals, heals, and wires. Since there is no auto regeneration, heals are very important to find. With these supplies, you can go to a jigsaw work table and craft yourself some mines. You heard me right, mines. You can craft a stun mine, which will just stun the enemy for a while, an explosive mine that will just explode if the enemy gets too near, and a gas mine, which will release a fart cloud if an enemy gets near. They take a lot of resources to craft, so you won't be using them too often, but they are pretty fun to use. Just a funny thing to add, the sound for searching the cabinets sounds exactly like bowling pins being knocked over. When I realized that, I laughed for like a solid 10 minutes. Overall, the gameplay is pretty repetitive, but it's still kind of fun. The immersion in this game is mainly in the map and asylum itself. It really feels like you are there and are fighting for your life. Each room that you enter has a purpose and feels like a real asylum. There are patient rooms that have beds and sometimes notes that you can read on them. Speaking of notes, the game has a bunch of notes scattered throughout the asylum. Some notes are patient notes, some are about doctors, and others are about the downfall of the asylum. It's interesting to read some of them as it further pulls you into this world and game. The level layout makes it very hard for you to get stuck or lost, as the game always guides you to where you have to go. I really hate games that just throw you into a massive place with no direction and expect you to just figure out where to go. The game lets you explore, but always in the direction of the objective. I also want to briefly mention the music. You will most likely not even notice the music while playing, as it is very seamless. At some points during the game, a quick tempo score is used to increase suspense during trap and puzzle sequences. A high-pitched tune can be heard during slower parts of the game, which was used to make these parts more ominous and tense. Small features like this is where the immersion comes from and is how the player is pulled into the game. It's so well done that you don't even notice it while playing. Overall, the game had mixed reviews. The game was nearly universally praised for the storyline and the two endings the game presented, and critics consistently mentioned the immersive atmosphere and environment as being true to the Saw series. The quality level of puzzles was mixed, depending on the reviewer. The controls were generally not well received by many, and worse, nearly every reviewer panned the combat system. I believe that this game is not for everyone. It will best be enjoyed by fans of the Saw IP. I am not the biggest fan of the movies, but I still enjoyed the game, despite it being a pretty messy game. Thank you for watching today's video.